quite glad to see a lot of students here today. Usually students don't participate very much to the main events that we organize at the Foscari, but today probably the speaker or the event or the topic of the conference attracted many of you. I'm quite glad to see you here. My role today is not to tell you what's the Inteti lecture. The Inteti lecture will be explained by Federico. I'm quite glad and I thank Federico for organizing again this year for the 8th time this lecture, which is one of the most important for the Department of Economics because it always attracts outstanding speakers. And this year, again, we have an outstanding speaker, Patrick Frey, who is one of the best professor of economics in Europe, certainly probably in the world. His contributions are well known all over many different universities, and he's been working and teaching in many universities, even though he's professor at the University of Toulouse and the École Polytechnique in Paris. But I think that Federico will spend a few words to present Professor Patrick Frey. I want just to thank him for being here. He's a good friend from a long time, and I'm really glad to see him in Ca' Foscari. I'm really glad that Patrick has been invited here because, at least during the years my mandate, I have loved to invite a lot of friends. It was not possible, but the possibility to meet him again here in Ca' Foscari was a very good one, and I really thank Federico as well for this opportunity. I know that this lecture will focus on a quite interesting and important topic with a lot of applications, so I invite all of you and students in particular to think about what Patrick will tell you in a very broad sense, because what he will teach us today is really many interesting applications in many different fields of economics. So thank you all, thank you for being here, thank you in particular to Patrick for the lectures he will deliver in a few minutes, and I give the floor to Federico, to Professor Retro, for a short introduction about the Inteti lecture and Professor Retro. Thank you very much.
So, as Carlo said, this is the 8th time we organize this Inteti lecture, and I would like very briefly to, first of all, remind you of the previous speakers, because at this point we have a very nice group of great economists, some of the leading economists, especially in the field of industrial organization. And we started with Avinash Dixit from Princeton University. We then had Rabah Amir from University of Arizona, John Sutton from the London School of Economics, Sir John Vickers from Oxford University, Richard Schmalensee from MIT, and Xavier Vives from Jese Business School was the first lecture given here actually in Venice in Cadolfin 2 years ago, while last year we had with us in this room Paul Migron from Stanford University. And this year we have the pleasure to have with us Patrick Frey from Toulouse School of Economics. And I would like to spend a few words to introduce Patrick and his lecture. So Patrick, as Carlo said, is a member of the Toulouse School of Economics. So I should remind this, especially for the students, the Toulouse School of Economics is, Toulouse of course, as you know, is a small city in France, but is a center of one of the best departments in economics in the world. I think I can definitely say for sure that the best department for the research in the field of industrial organization, thanks to people like Patrick Frey and also to others as Lafont in the past and Jean Tirole or Jacques Remer. Patrick is a professor there and at the École Polytechnique. He is also the president of the European Association for Research in Industrial Economics. He had a PhD in Toulouse, and before he got a degree in engineering in Paris at the École Polytechnique, and a master at NCI in Paris. So he's a leading researcher in the field of industrial organization, regulation and competition policy, innovation and intellectual property rights, with publications on the leading journals such as American Economic Review, Econometrica, European Economic Review, Review of Economic Studies, and many others. And in his career, he has focused both on theoretical studies and on applied economics. So on the first front, I would like just to remind briefly some of the many works of Patrick. Like the first one, I knew today was a paper that he wrote with Jean Tirole when he was just a student, The Logic of Vertical Restraints, the first famous paper by Patrick. Then a lot of papers, a few papers with Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel Prize for Economics, classics on interbrand competition. Works with Philippe Aghion and Matthias de la Tripont on contract theory, bargaining and renegotiation. And then classic works on network competition. Many of these works are applied to understanding markets of the new economy and the innovative markets. Network competition papers written with Lafont and Tirole. But he has also worked on other fields like growth, a classic paper on competition, financial discipline, and growth written with Aghion and de la Tripont is recognized as a very important paper in this field. And he has worked a lot also in innovation. The lecture today will be about innovation and collusion. But besides this very sophisticated work in economic theory, he is one of those economists who has been able to apply his knowledge to practical issues. As a consultant for international organizations, for the World Bank, the OECD, for the French regulator for telecoms and postal services, for the French competition authorities, and for other competition authorities. And he belongs, since the beginning, to the group, to the Economic Advisory Group for Competition Policy, which is a group of IO economists, industrial organization economists, that provide consulting to the European Commission, DG Comp in particular, when the European Union is preparing new regulation on the front of competition policy. So the reports that they usually provide on many topics on antitrust policy are the basis for the debate in policy making and also in the academia. So theoretical work, applied work, and with this I would leave the floor to Patrick Ray for the 8th Intertech lecture. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Thank you very much, Federico, for giving me this opportunity to share some views with you on the topic of cooperation or collusion. And I'll try to demystify this mysterious title. It's really a pleasure to be here. I really thank the two of you for giving me this opportunity, particularly with this ground view. I hope to, this is tough competition, but I'll try to do my best to keep you focused on that side of the business. This presentation is based on ongoing current joint work with my old accomplice Jean Tirole. So the topic of the day is commercial cooperation. This comes in many different forms. Firms can try to set up a joint venture to market a product together. You have various kinds of marketing alliances, in the airline industry, for example. You have some co-branding agreements in telecom. This is mobile telecommunications. This is pretty often the case. When it comes to intellectual property or innovation more generally, you have the so-called patent pools, i.e. IP, intellectual property rights owners, putting together their IP rights in order to market those IP rights, as a bundle. Now, when it comes to, of course, those various forms of commercial cooperation attract the attention of competition authorities. Competition authorities, and more generally speaking, antitrust or industry supervisors are there to ensure that competition takes place everywhere it should take place. So, and obviously, if you look at the various antitrust laws around the world, one of the very first things on the agenda, and not only on the law itself, but also on the way it is enforced, is the fight against cartels. if you look at one of the oldest competition laws worldwide, which is the Sherman Act, which was adopted in the US in 1890, just a year after Canada adopted a similar law. The first section, the first article, if you wish, of this Sherman Act is really about conspiring against competition, avoiding competition. Likewise, if you turn to this side of the Atlantic, the first article of the Treaty of Rome that is relevant for competition policy in Europe is about agreements, anti-competitive agreements among firms that try to avoid competition. So clearly there is this view that cartel agreements, cartel collusion is bad. If you look at the way this is enforced, more than half of the staff of the US Department of Justice, which is of the two competition agencies in the US in charge of enforcing competition law, that's the one that is in charge of the fight against cartels. More than half of the staff is dedicated to cartel cases. So it's not only the first article in the law, but it's also it occupies more than half of the staff of the leading competition agency in the US in this area. Likewise, now there are two directorates in the European Commission, in the Directorate General for Competition within the European Commission that are specifically targeted to fighting cartel collusion. So collusion is bad. Now, of course, what we mean by this is that avoiding competition, so collusion and among firms that have substitutable products, that is bad. This is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid because, in the short term, that would lead to higher prices, so it would distort usage, there would be too little usage. So not only is it bad for consumers, but it's bad for society as a whole because, there will be some products will be under-consumed, if you wish, or some infrastructure will be underused. But also in the long term, there is a concern that the lack of competition among substitutable products among competitors, what we call horizontal competition, the lack of competition may also lead to little investment. This is Sergeant Hicks said that the best of all monopoly profits is a quiet life. My personal favorite example on this is a case involving the French Competition Agency on the one hand and monks in a small island off the Riviera on the other hand, where the monks were the owners of the port infrastructure, and the competition agency stepped in and required that they open up this infrastructure so that competing travel companies could operate, make the connection between the island and the mainland. And I really believe in this case that yes, one of the reasons why the monks did not want to open up was precisely to keep a quiet life. But more generally speaking, there is a concern that indeed the lack of competition may lead firms to be a bit sleepy and not undertake all the investments that should be made, not be a bit lazy in terms of innovation efforts. Now, on the other hand, we all know that when you have goods that are complements, it may be a very good idea to encourage cooperation among providers of complementary products. There is a so-called Corno effect, where it's a good idea to avoid double margination. If we have two complementary products, like in order to make a bolt, you need the nuts and the screws. If you control one of those two, if you have monopoly power over one of those products, then when setting your prices, you will take into account the well-known trade-off between margin and volumes. So if you increase the price, you will earn a better margin on your products. That's good news. But you will sell fewer of them. That's the bad news. But when assessing this trade-off, you will ignore the impact that raising your price will have on the demand for the complementary products. And therefore, you will depress the demand for the other components, if you wish. And that is, failing to take that into account, you will end up with prices that will add up multiple margins and lead to prices that are excessive, not only from the point of view of users, of consumers, but also from the point of view of the joint profit maximization, industry profit maximization. In the particular case of intellectual property, when it comes to technologies like the ones that underlie the use of your cell phones, smartphones, well, there are zillions of patents that are involved. This multiplication of margins lead to the so-called royalty stacking issue, where the problem really becomes cumbersome. More generally speaking, when you have complementary products, it's often a good idea to encourage cooperation among the active players, and this is in particular the case when it comes to standard setting. You have those standard setting organizations where all the industry players sit around the table and try to cooperate on determining what should be included or not in the standards, so as to make sure that everyone after that will be using the same ingredients, the same bits of technology, so as to benefit from economies of scale and learning and so forth. So this is, generally speaking, so we have this dichotomy, if you wish, undesirable collusion among producers of substitute goods or providers of alternative technologies or services on the one hand, and on the other hand, desirable cooperation among providers of complementary goods or services. This, now, the issue, therefore, from the point of view of regulatory oversight, the issue is to determine whether goods are complements or substitutes. Unfortunately, there are many instances where this is not a trivial question. Let me give you one example. There was a big merger that was proposed by Grandmet and Guinness, two companies, two firms owning large portfolios of alcoholic beverages. They decided to merge, and this case was reviewed by the European Commission that had to approve or not the merger. So here is how those two companies. They have so portfolios of vodka, whiskey, rum, gin, you name it. One of them in particular had the leading brand of vodka, the other one had the leading brand of gin and whiskey, Johnny Walker, not to mention it. And the question that was one of the key questions, if you read the decision of the European Commission in this case, is to determine whether gin and vodka are complements or substitutes. The idea being, if they are substitutes, the merger is bad, it will end at raising prices. If they are complements, then the merger will be good. Avoiding double mentionation, that will be good for users as well as for the firms. And if you go through the pages of this decision, it's really interesting because there are times in which the way, the wording, the arguments, and so on suggest that the underlying working hypothesis of the Commission is that obviously those two alcoholic beverages, vodka and gin, are complements, and there are other pages of the same decision where when you go through this, you have the feeling that the underlying working assumption there is that the goods are instead substitutes, depending on whether, so it's clearly the European Commission, as if it was written by different people, which it was, that decision suggests that there was no consensus even within the Commission, but whether the two goods were complements or substitutes. Now, think of, suppose that you want to throw a party. If this is, just a very small party with a couple of friends, then maybe you want to aim at buying one bottle of alcoholic beverage, and then you have to decide gin or vodka, and there will be substitutes. If instead you decide to throw a larger party and willing to invest into two bottles, then obviously it's probably a good idea to diversify your portfolio and go for one bottle of gin and one bottle of vodka. And in which case, the two goods, two products will be complements. So depending on the kind of usage, it may well be the case that for some users, the two goods will be complements. For other users, the two goods in question, the same two goods with the same physical characteristics, with the same prices, may instead appear to be complements or substitutes. When it comes to patent pools and patents, more generally speaking, trying to determine whether two patents are complements or substitutes is even harder. You have to invest in detailed knowledge of what is the technology about in order to determine whether those two patterns are relating to alternative technologies, which therefore should be competing in the market and should correspond to substitutable products, or whether those patterns are instead two different ingredients of the same technology, in which case there will be essential, there may be essential patterns for developing this particular technology, and therefore the two patterns in that case would appear to be complements. And whether they are, those two patterns are relating to one case or another may be pretty tricky to determine. The issue is even more interesting and more complex when it comes to so-called standard essential patterns, because there, depending on whether you take the view ex ante before the standard is set, or ex post once the standard has been set, and therefore some bits have been included in the standard and other bits of technologies have been excluded from the standard, then the ones that have been included in the standards all of a sudden become complements. They become essential. You cannot use the standard without using each and every one of them. And possibly before the standard was set, it may well have been the case that those two patterns, those two bits of technologies would have been substituted instead. The issue becomes even more interesting and ambiguous when you take into consideration the fact that technology evolves, usage of the given technology may evolve over time, new uses may appear that were not anticipated at the beginning, so it may, this issue as to whether those two bits of technology are complements or substitutes may well evolve over time. And finally, not only this may evolve over time, but this might be really to make it even more ambiguous. It may also depend on price levels. Let's come back to my little example with the small party or large party. If you have a given budget and you live in let's say Moscow, where actually vodka is pretty cheap, then and alcoholic beverages, some of the alcoholic beverages are not that expensive, then with this budget, you may be willing to buy more than one bottle, and in that case the goods will be complements. But if you live in other countries, like Nordic countries, where the price of alcohol is amazingly expensive, then with the same budget you may go for only one bottle, and in that case the goods will be complements. So what I'm saying here is that depending on price levels, you may decide to conditional on adopting a technology or conditional on deciding to throw a party. You may go for a subset of products, goods, services, in which case they will be competing for being included in the basket, and there will be substitutes, whereas when prices are lower, conditional on adopting the platform, throwing the party, and so forth, you will go for a larger basket, in which case the various components in that basket will become complements. And I'm going to try to capture this idea a bit more. Now, when it comes to industry oversight, you have, on the one hand, you have industry-specific regulators. When the industry in question is subject to this kind of regulatory oversight, there is an ongoing supervision, meaning that the regulators have invest over time and acquire detailed knowledge about the industry. Intervention is often ex ante, meaning in particular that the regulator can ex ante determine what kind of information has to be collected, will have to be collected in the process. So what kind of data will be collected, all this makes it relatively easier for industry-specific regulator to engage in relatively fine, detailed regulations. When it comes to competition agencies, on the other hand, they are involved in across-the-board industry supervision. They may be dealing with gin and vodka one day, with banana the other day, with steel the next day, and so forth. So they don't really have necessarily detailed knowledge, expertise in each and every of the industry sectors that they have to oversee. And as a general rule, not being able to maybe engage in very fine detailed regulation of the various industries, the general rule when it comes to firms discussing prices, the general rule is back off. No, this is not a good idea. There is a general reluctance against rules, letting firms discuss prices. This means that if you compare the situation nowadays with the situation we had before the Second World War, where many industries were run by patent pools, now those patent pools has almost disappeared. There are still a few of them, but very few compared with what was. And this comes from various decisions, judgments by the U.S. Supreme Court on the other side of the Atlantic, some cases and guidelines, case law on this side of the Atlantic by the European Commission that have, the competition agencies have sent the message, be careful, we don't like firms, agreeing, setting prices, discussing prices and setting prices together. Which means that we have now this has led firms to adopt, in the context of standard setting, for example, to adopt vague rules, vague notions, vague concepts, such as the so-called FRAND notion, FRAND standing for fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. On this side of the Atlantic, on the other side of the Atlantic, it's actually referred to as RAND. They dropped the fair for some reason, but in Europe we are fair as well as reasonable and non-discriminatory. This non-discriminatory, we may argue, but maybe we'll be able to agree on what it means. Reasonable, that's more of a challenge. Fair, what is fair and so on. This has led to, because the firms could not discuss prices, they could not say, here's the royalty rate I will charge for my patent. At the time of the standard was set, they only agreed to general rules such as FRAND, and then, guess what? Once the standard has been adopted, those firms that have patents that are part of the standard, so-called standard essential patents, are now setting rates, royalty rates, saying, yes, this rate is fair, and the others, of course, are saying those rates are outrageous. So this has led to huge legal disputes that are still going on at the moment. There is a big fight going on in Redmond, the hometown of Microsoft, opposing Microsoft to Google, Apple, and so forth. Recently, Samsung has been famous for being involved in injunctions, telling manufacturers of smartphones and so on, rivals, saying you cannot do this because you are infringing of my patents, and basically asking the police to stop shipments and the sales of rival products, until asking for those rivals to pay significant patents. And you may have seen in the news that last week Samsung was under attack by the European Commission, has accepted to stop relying on this kind of infringement processes for the deal, but we'll still have to see exactly how all this will be settled. So the fact that at the time where the standards are discussed, the fact that the firms cannot discuss prices has led to the adoption of those vague notions, and the consequence has been that later down the road there has been a huge dispute on the interpretation of those notions, such as fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. So one of the points I would like to make is that it may be a good idea to find a way to let firms discuss prices when it is desirable, so as to avoid this kind of ex-post disputes. So more generally speaking, what would be good is to have some kind of screen, i.e., one way of screening out bad marketing, joint marketing alliances or bad commercial cooperation on the one hand, without letting in good, socially desirable cooperation when it comes to complementary products. So you want to find a way of screening out undesired commercial cooperation among substitutes, and at the same time letting encouraging the development of commercial cooperation when you have complementary products. But you want to do this, you want to find a screen that does not require too much information from those in charge of determining whether this commercial cooperation is desirable or not. Because antitrust authorities typically lack the detailed information, the detailed knowledge that will be required in order to determine whether we are dealing with complements or substitutes. So what we are looking for, and I'll try to convince you that there is some hope there, what we are looking for is kind of information-free screening devices. So here's the roadmap for my presentation. I will first try to develop a framework that will allow me to capture the ambiguity when it comes to determining whether two products are complements or substitutes. This framework will be based on enlisted demand for technology. I will frame my exposition in terms of innovation, intellectual property rights, patents. So think of, there is technology out there, and potential users have to determine whether or not to adopt the technology, and conditional on adopting the technology, they have to determine the configuration, the perimeter, if you wish, of the technology. They have to determine which elements, which ingredients of the technology they will take within the given technology class. So that will be broadly speaking, the framework. I will be more precise later on. Again, I will, and given the nature of the lecture series here, I will frame my exposition in terms of IP rights, patent, innovation, but I will submit that it would apply more generally to other contexts, online platforms. You have to decide whether to go to Expedia or Amazon or e-booking. On the one hand, the number of products that will be on offer in a given platform will contribute to induce users to go to this platform, to that platform. So in that sense, the products in question will be, the products you can find on given platforms are complements. But once you have decided to go and visit a given platform, then you have the choice between books or alternative hotels or alternative trips, and those products or services will, at this stage, will be a substitute. So you have the same duality between, some part of this analysis suggests that the goods are complements, part of this suggests that the goods are substitutes. So you find exactly the same duality as the one I was mentioned before. Same thing for cable TV, pay TV operators. You may choose to subscribe to one or the other of the competing pay TV services, and in order to determine whether you're going to subscribe or not to a given pay TV service, you will look at the channels that are the content that is on offer by this pay TV operator. Once you have decided to subscribe, you have to decide which channel to watch. So again, you have the same duality between complementary. Some part of this is complementary when it comes to deciding whether to subscribe or not. Part of this involves substitute products. Once you have decided to subscribe, you have to decide which channel to watch, and in that case, at this point, they will become substitutes. You have the same thing in some countries, like in the US, you have health insurance networks with hospitals affiliated to a given network. So the more hospitals are affiliated with a given network, the more likely you will be willing to subscribe to that particular network. But once you have subscribed to this network, when it comes to deciding which hospital to go, then the hospitals will be in competition and so on. And so forth and so on. I mentioned the product portfolio with the case with the example of Grand Met, portfolios of alcoholic beverages, but you find this in other industries. You have the portfolio of brands as well in other industries. So that would be the first point. Providing a framework for that captures the ambiguity between what is the nature of complementary products and the nature of substitute products. Having developed this framework, I will try to put it to good use and make the distinction between the kind of coordination among firms that is desirable, typically when it involves complementary products, and the kind of coordination that is undesirable, typically when it involves products that are competing against each other, that are substitutes. I'll do this by looking at what would be, in a given framework, what would be the outcome of uncoordinated behavior on the one hand, standard uncoordinated pricing competition on the one hand, and what would be the outcome of coordinating pricing decisions on the other hand. And you can think of coordinating pricing decisions through patent pools, joint marketing alliance, and whatnot. I will show that in this regime there can be, I will identify two relevant regimes. I will refer to the case of rivalry to when the objective of coordination would be to raise prices. So I will refer to rivalry or rival products to refer to situations where uncoordinated pricing decisions would lead to lower prices than coordinated pricing decisions. So in that case, coordination is bad. This would be the case of collusion, of cartels, cartels that are trying to avoid competition and raise prices. And I will refer to the case of complementers, when coordinated pricing decisions would instead avoid double margination and lead to lower prices than what a cartel would choose. So in that case, there will be double margination and cooperation is socially desirable. I will then turn to the regulatory oversight, and the issue from the point of view of regulators will be to determine whether coordination is good or bad, whether the goods are complements or substitutes in the end. I will, and I'll try to look for kind of screening or screening device that requires little information by the regulators, and I will suggest, and this is, I will draw here on another paper of my colleague Jean Tirole, which was co-authored with Georges Lerner, published in the AER in 2004, where they show that a relatively simple requirement, namely independent licensing, suffices to screen out bad pools, bad patent pools, if you wish, and at the same time screen in, allowing for desirable welfare increasing pools. So the idea is, if you let firms form a pool, with the caveat, with the proviso that IP holders or pool members retain the property rights over their own piece of IP, and therefore retain the right of offering individual licenses outside the pool, then basically this ability, this capability of offering individual licenses would undermine bad pools that would try to avoid competition, pools that would try to raise prices, will be undermined by the pool members' ability to offer individual licenses on their own. That's the spirit. At the same time, if the purpose of the pool is to avoid double margination and to lower prices, then such a welfare-enhancing pool will not be destabilized by the possibility by pool members to offer individual licensing. So, in a sense, this requirement, this very simple requirement, independent licensing, screens out bad pools without destabilizing good pools. So, and the beauty, of course, is that it requires no information whatsoever by regulators. They only have to check that indeed pool members retain the ability to issue individual licenses on their own. They don't have to be engaged in the business of setting prices or second-guessing firms' pricing decisions or the pool pricing decisions or individual pool members' pricing decisions. They don't need to do this. They just have to check that this proviso, this requirement is in place and without undue friction. Now, one of the issues that was raised when Jean was presenting those papers, it was first raised by Amelia Fletcher, who then was the chief economist of the UK Office of Fair Trading, the British competition agency. And Amelia raised the question, okay, all this is good, but here making the point in the context of kind of a static analysis of a one-shot competition, but in practice, through repeated interaction, firms may be able to engage in tacit coordination. And what do you know about the impact of a pool, or more generally speaking, the impact of a joint marketing alliance on the scope for tacit coordination? And can you be sure that even when subject to independent licensing requirement, a pool could not facilitate undesired tacit collusion, that would aim at raising prices through repeated interaction? And that will be the last part of my talk, and there I will go on this ongoing joint work with Jean Tirant, which tackles this issue. So what we'll be doing is first to allow for repeated interaction and try to see what is the scope for tacit coordination. Now, you may have done some exercises in this vein. Take the same Bertrand duopoly, put it in a repeated interaction, repeat the same competition over time, and try to see whether if firms are patient enough, they can sustain prices that are above the competitive level. Usually in this context, the name of the game is to see whether firms starting from a candidate equilibrium where the prices would be above the competitive level, whether firms can profitably deviate. And the trade-off is if I deviate today, if I undercut my competitors, I will be able to make more profit today, but of course they are going to punish me by retaliating, so tomorrow it will be a price war or whatnot. So that's usually the way it works. When it comes to complementary products, it's just exactly the opposite. Firms may be trying to coordinate tacitly, to cooperate tacitly into reducing the prices, and this particular firm may be tempted to deviate by raising its own price. So you just have to take the standard reasoning, put it upside down, which is a bit of fun. So we'll be doing this. We'll be looking at trying to characterize the scope for tacit coordination among firms, with distinguishing the case where you have undesirable tacit coordination, tacit collusion in that case among substitutes, or possibly desirable tacit cooperation among firms that are trying to avoid double margination and trying to lower prices. And then within this context, we'll be looking for what is the impact of a pool subject or joint marketing alliance subject to independent licensing. And what we'll show is that independent licensing does a pretty good job in the sense that it still allows for perfect cooperation when firms are trying to cooperate in avoiding double margination. But at the same time, it may allow for more collusion in some cases, so it's not a perfect screen anymore. And what we'll show, and this is the main contribution of that paper, is that appending an unbundling requirement, so requiring the pool to set prices not only for the bundle, for the package, but also for the various components, suffices to restore the perfect screen property. So in other words, there was still a way to provide competition agencies with relatively simple information-free screens that screen out bad pools without, and at the same time allow for the development of desirable cooperation when this cooperation is indeed desirable. So that's the roadmap. Let me start with first developing a framework that tries to capture this ambiguity between whether products or goods or services are complementary substitutes. Here's a simple example. There are two patents, let's say, 1 and 2. These are patents related to a given technology. The technology has a value of 10 if users adopt the technology with both patents. So it brings you a profit of 10, if you wish, if you adopt it with both patents. If you adopt the technology with only one patent, then it's a weaker version of the technology, so an incomplete version of the technology. So instead of having 10, you will get something less, 10 minus E. And you can interpret this E parameter as the degree of essentiality. If E is small, it means that you can get almost the full value of the technology with only one patent, and either one in that case. Whereas when E is very large, then you really need both patents in order to get most of the value of the technology. So that's think of this E parameter as a parameter that tries to capture the degree of essentiality of the two patents. Now, in order to adopt the technology, users have to incur a cost, and actually for half of the users, this is free, so they don't have to incur any cost, but for the other half of the users, they do have to incur a cost, and I'll pick in my example, I've picked the cost of 4. Now the question I'm asking you, are those patents complements or substitutes? That's the question. So let's, in order to answer this question, let's start with a little exercise. Suppose that you have a cartel that operates this industry, and the cartels determine jointly the price at which those patents are sold. Now, since it is better to, there is more value in using both patents than only one patent, it will be, and of course it's a patent, so there is no cost involved in using the patent as such. So it would be efficient to license both patents. The question is, what is the right price, the right monopoly price for those two patents? Now, I've cooked my little toy example. For some users, if you use with two patents, you will have the price would sorry. For half of the users, the cost is 0, so they will be willing to pay up to the full value of 10 for using the technology. For the other half of the users, they have to incur a cost of 4, so they will be only willing to pay up to 10 minus 4, the full value minus the cost, which is a net value of 6. So half of the users are willing to pay up to 6, the other half of the users are willing to pay up to 4, and in this I've cooked the figures so as to make sure that it is more valuable, it's more profitable for the industry as a whole to sell to all users at a price of 6 rather than selling at only half of the users at a price of 10. Half of 10 is 5, that is less than 6. So far so good. I've just determined what would be the right price if the industry was run by a cartel and the cartel was setting the price for the product. It would sell the bundle, the whole technology at a price of 6. And all users would adopt the technology at that price. Now, let's think of what is the competitive outcome. Well, the competitive outcome depends on the value of this essentiality parameter. Let's first take two simple polar cases. First, suppose that E is 0. What it means, so the goods or the patents are not essential at all. It simply means that they are perfect substitute. You can get the full value, V equal 10, with either patent. You don't need both patents. Only one patent, either one will give you the full value of the technology. In which case, the two patents are obviously perfect substitute. And therefore, if you have a standard uncoordinated pricing decision, Nash, the static Nash outcome, the Bertrand equilibrium is that both firms will supply their products at cost, i.e., in this case, both firms will be willing to license to issue licenses at 0 price. The cost is 0 here. The cost of giving away a license is 0. So in that case, the Nash outcome will be a price of 0, which is obviously below the monopoly price of 6. Consider now the other polar case where you would have perfect complements, i.e. E is equal to V. So the degree of essentiality is equal to the full value of the technology, which means that if you use only one patent, you get 0. You really need to have both patents in order to derive the benefits of the technology. Okay? One patent gives you exactly nothing. In that case, what will be the static Nash outcome? Well, for example, could it be the case that the monopoly outcome, could you sustain the monopoly outcome as an uncoordinated pricing decision? The answer is no. It is no because you have double margination. To see this, suppose take the monopoly outcome. So the monopoly outcome is the price of 6 for the bundle. So i.e. per license price of 3, each firm charging 3 for its own bit, for its own patent. Can this be an equilibrium? No. Starting from this, if you offer your own patent at a price of 3, then I would rather deviate, rather than selling mine at a price of 3, I would rather deviate and increase my price. Well, if you sell a price of 3, I can, by selling at 3, I would sell to all users, and I would get therefore 3 times your 1, the full population. Whereas, if I increase my price, then those users that have to incur a cost of adopting the technology will drop out, but all the other users, the ones who can adopt the technology at 0 cost, will still be willing to buy, and they will be willing to buy as long as the price, the total price for technology does not exceed 10. So I can charge up to 10 minus your 3 is 7. And I can, it's more profitable to sell at a price of, to sell at the price of 7 to half of the population, rather than by selling at 3 to everyone. I get 3.5 the other way around. So clearly, this is just to show that there is indeed double marginalization. The monopoly outcome cannot be supported in the case of perfect complements. In the end, you end up with prices that are higher than the monopoly level. Standard double marginalization, the so-called Corno effect. The Nash outcome, the uncoordinated decision outcome here will be that both firms will charge a price of 5. You charge 5, I charge 5, and we sell to half of the users at a total price of 10. That's so what you have in those you have two polar cases. In the case of perfect substitutes, the uncoordinated decision, competition will drive prices down to 0, and that's good for users. It's better than the monopoly outcome. In the case of perfect complements, instead, the uncoordinated pricing decisions yields double marginalization and generates a price that is higher than the monopoly level. That's bad. More generally speaking, as long as the degree of essentiality is lower than this critical threshold of 5, the static Nash equilibrium, the outcome of uncoordinated pricing decisions, will be that both firms will charge a price equal to this essentiality parameter. The idea being that, if starting from this, what we would like to do is we would like to, starting from a situation where we both charge a price equal to E, each one of us would like to raise the price. We would like, double marginalization. We would like to increase our price. But if we increase our price, our technology, our patent will be dropped, will be ejected from the basket, because then the users would rather buy the incomplete version of the technology at the price offered by the other firm. So that's the equilibrium, when instead the essentiality parameter E exceeds this critical threshold of 5, which was the case, the outcome under perfect complements, then it's both firms offering their patent at this critical price is constitute the outcome of the competitive uncoordinated pricing decision process. So here's that's the to recap. I have a setup here, a very simple framework in which I can capture the fact by playing around with this essentiality parameter. I can cover the entire range from perfect substitutes to perfect complements, and in the end, I can answer the question: when is it that we have de facto rivalry, or when is it that we have de facto complementers? When is it that coordination would tend to raise prices? When is it that cooperation would instead tend to lower prices? The answer is when this essentiality parameter is lower than the monopoly price. So when this parameter E is lower than 3, my little example here, we have rivalry in the sense that the outcome of uncoordinated pricing decision will lead to prices that are lower than the monopoly level, and coordination in that case would be bad collusion, bad cartelization, that will raise price, that's bad for users and for society. When instead this essentiality parameter exceeds the monopoly price, exceeds the level of 3, then the outcome of uncoordinated pricing decisions will lead to prices that are higher than the monopoly level. In that case, allowing, encouraging firms and allowing them to cooperate on pricing decisions will lead to lower prices and will be socially valuable. So more generally, we can extend this framework here, sticking to the case of a symmetric duopoly first, but in the paper we extend this to more than 2 firms and and we allow for asymmetric firms as well. We can enlarge or make the framework a bit more general by playing around with this, not only with this essentiality parameter, but also with the distribution of the adoption cost among the users. And you have here a small summary of how to do this. The only difference between this and the previous slides is that now I don't have to specify exactly numbers, for the values or for the various for the value of the technology or for the various values of the cost. I can be a bit more general in terms of how the user's adoption cost is distributed among users. So we can use this framework. We can again go through the same steps. I'm not going to repeat them, but you can determine what will be the outcome of uncoordinated pricing decisions and compare this with what will be the outcome for an industry-wide monopoly. And in a sense, I have a small figure here that summarizes this, which you find the same features as in the little example, the little toy model I was playing around. You have here the horizontal axis is the essentiality parameter, which is, so for some reason I have written here, but this is the E, ranging from E equals 0, the case of perfect substitutes, to up to E equal to V, which is the case of perfect complements. And here you have the competitive price, if you wish, the outcome of uncoordinated pricing decisions, as long you have a critical threshold, which is this P hat, which was 5 before. So this would be the competitive outcome or the outcome of uncoordination if you have perfect complements. And indeed, if you see that whenever the essentiality parameter exceeds this threshold, so in all this range, the outcome is this, the prices are equal to this critical level. When the essentiality parameter is instead lower than this threshold, then it's the essentiality parameter that determines the outcome of uncoordinated decisions. The outcome is such that both firms will charge a price equal to this essentiality parameter. The idea being that if they were to, they would like to raise prices, but if they were to raise prices, their patent will be ejected from the basket. So that's the constraint. Now, by double margination, we know that this critical threshold is higher than the monopoly level, so we can now determine see that there are two relevant regions, two relevant regimes. This is, as long as the essentiality parameter is lower than the monopoly price, then we have this hybrid region where it's good to fight coordination. The coordination would aim at raising prices. In the absence of coordination, you have competition among substitutes and you have lower prices, which is good for users. When instead the essentiality parameter exceeds this the monopoly price, then the outcome of uncoordinated decisions will be higher prices than monopoly level due to double marginalization. In that case, you would like to encourage cooperation among firms. I now turn to the question: how do we know? How can competition agencies screen out good pools from bad pools? Pools that aim at raising prices versus pools that are aiming at reducing prices. The bad pools are the ones where correspond to situations where the monopoly price exceeds the outcome of uncoordinated pricing decisions. So we have to compare this monopoly price PM to the degree of essentiality E. Now, so if E, the essentiality parameter, is lower than monopoly price, the pool will be bad. If E is higher than the monopoly price, the pool will be good. The question is that this little comparison involves things that are really very fine detailed knowledge of a user's characteristics. This essentiality parameter, captures how much more value there is, how much more value users can derive from having two buttons, using two buttons instead of one. How can competition agency figure this out? The other part of the comparison is the monopoly price. It depends not only on the value of the technology, of the complete technology, but it also depends on the elasticity of the demand here, which is captured by the distribution of the adoption cost. How can competition agencies get a good idea of this distribution of adoption cost among users? This is a tough question. So this comparison that looks simple on paper involves a lot of information, a lot of detailed knowledge about the underlying characteristics of the users. And unfortunately, this is the comparison that you have to make in order to determine whether a pool will be good or bad for users and society. So what we show in this, what Georges and Jean have shown in their previous paper, is that a very simple instrument, namely this independent licensing requirement, suffices to screen out bad pools and yet allow the development of good pools. And here is the intuition. Suppose that you do this. So suppose that you tell firms, you can do whatever you want. You can form pools if you want. You can engage in joint marketing alliances if you want. You can engage in commercial cooperation if you want, provided that each firm retains the opportunity of selling individual licenses or selling its own product on the side, outside the alliance, outside the pool. And the reason why this works is as follows. If you have so suppose that the firms set up a pool, and this pool offers the bundle of the products at the monopoly price. Now, starting from this situation, a firm that tries to undercut the pool, it tries to sell individual licenses. In order to sell an individual license, you have somehow to steal consumers, users away from the pool. So those users can buy the complete technology or the bundle at the monopoly price. Or if you offer an individual license, they can choose your own product at the price you offer. In order to attract users, you have to make sure that this offer is attractive. So it has to be the case that the quality-adjusted price P plus E, the price P at which you sell a technology that has a degraded value degraded by E. So they have to pay your price P. They have to suffer a loss of value E because they will have your product but not the bundle. So they will have the incomplete version of the technology if you wish. So the total quality adjusted price is P plus E. And this has to match the monopoly price at which the pool is selling the bundle. So the profit that a firm can make by undercutting the pool is this margin. The maximal price you can charge is the monopoly price minus the monopoly price for the bundle minus the loss of value from offering only one product instead of offering the bundle. As you can see, the question is whether this is larger or smaller than what you will get through through the dividends, your share of the profit of the pool. If you don't undercut the pool, then the pool will sell the bundle at a total price of total 2 PM here, where PM is the per product monopoly price. So you have the choice. Either you get your share of the profit of the pool, or you sell on your own. And as you can see, this amounts to determining whether this margin here will be higher or smaller than the monopoly price you get through the pool. And essentially, when you have a bad pool, when the firms are de facto rival competitors, then it's not worth undercutting the pool. When instead when the firms are rival, when the firms are trying to sell at a monopoly price which is above the uncoordinated pricing outcome, then then it is worth undercutting the pool. When instead the firms are complementers, then it's not worth undercutting the pool. So this works just fine. This requirement ensures that firms would have an incentive to undercut the pool if the pool was a bad pool, aiming at raising prices, and firms will not have an incentive to undermine the pool, undercut the pool if it is a good pool that aims at lowering prices. And this is pretty intuitive. If the pool aims at raising prices above the competitive level, then firms will have an incentive to undercut it. In the same way that they would have an incentive to undercut each other, starting from an agreement of saying, let's charge the monopoly price. When instead the purpose of the pool is to avoid double margination and therefore to lower prices compared with the outcome of uncorrelated pricing decisions, then the firms will have no incentive whatsoever to further undercut that pool, to charge, to go below the price that internalizes double margination. So that's this was the finding of the contribution of Josh and Jean in their previous papers. And let me now turn to what happens if you consider the possibility of tacit coordination. So I'm going to move to tacit coordination. So let's suppose now that firms are engaged in repeated interaction. And through repeated interaction, even in the absence of the pool, they may try to engage in tacit coordination. And in order to determine the scope for tacit coordination, you have to assess how much you could punish a firm that would deviate from the tacitly agreed coordination outcome. So in order to see how much coordination you can have, you will have to see how much punishment there could be. Now, in this, in the setup that in the framework that I've sketched, the worst punishments are are so-called min-max, for those of you who are interested in game theory. So this is the worst outcome that can be inflicted on a firm, taking into account that it can always optimize in response to the strategy of its rival. So here, it turns out to be relatively simple. Whenever you have the essentiality parameter is lower than the critical threshold that I've mentioned earlier, then the static Nash equilibrium is also the min-max. So you can use reversal to static Nash, to static outcome of uncorrelated decisions. This provides the worst punishments, so the best punishments, if you wish, the toughest punishments that you can inflict. So just reverting to the uncoordinated outcome provides the best punishments that can be inflicted. So in order to determine whether you can coordinate, it suffices to consider a candidate coordinated outcome and say, if you deviate from this today, you might benefit today, but then from tomorrow onwards, you will be punished by reverting to the static outcome without any coordination. So here's a small table that summarizes the various types of agreements that, or coordination that can arise. In the rivalry region, so this is the case where the static outcome of uncoordinated decision would lead to an equilibrium where both firms would charge a price equal to the essentiality parameter, and this is lower than the monopoly outcome, so you have a rivalry here, you have competition. And in order to see the scope for coordination, undesirable tacit collusion here, you have to, let's consider a price P that would be above the uncoordinated, the competitive level. Let's take a price P. So if this price P is above the static, the competitive pricing, competitive level, it means that firms, the users, will buy only the incomplete version of the technology because the price will be above the essentiality parameter, so they will not buy both products, but they will only buy one of them. So you get, this is the reason why you have this 1/2 parameter here, which reflects that, in a sense, collusion is inefficient. Collusion leads users to adopt the incomplete version of the technology. So you have this inefficiency, and you can sustain this, of course, by undercutting your rival. We agree that we are going to charge a price above the competitive level. Each of us will sell half the technology only. So one of us will sell, the other one will not. So on average, we get half of the users. Now, of course, by slightly undercutting you, I can get all the users. So I can double my the profit I make at the time I deviate. But if I deviate today, I double my profit today. But tomorrow onwards, we will not coordinate anymore. We'll revert to the static uncoordinated pricing outcome, and that's the condition. So this is the essence of this condition that determines whether the collision can be sustained or not. The key parameter here being this delta, which is the discount factor, which is the weight associated, the weight given to profit in the future as opposed to profit today. So in a sense, you can sustain collusion if the discount factor is large enough, and you can determine the threshold of the discount factor above which collusion is feasible. You can do the same in the other cases. The main difference being that in the other cases, i.e. when you have complementers, the deviation consists in raising your price instead of lowering your price. This is where you have to work on your hands, compared with the standard analysis of tacit collusion. Here's a picture that summarizes the analysis. The horizontal axis is the essentiality parameter. So this essentiality parameter ranges from 0 up to capital V for perfect substitutes here, up to perfect complements there. Here you have here is the monopoly price. So this region here is the region of rivalry. This is the region where collusion is tacit coordination aims at raising prices. The firms try to avoid competition and try to raise prices. The vertical axis is the discount factor. So as I mentioned, when the discount factor is large enough, i.e. when firms put enough weight in the future, you can sustain tacit coordination. The idea being, if you deviate today, you will be punished tomorrow. If you pay sufficient attention to the punishment tomorrow, you will not deviate today, and therefore you can sustain tacit coordination. You can coordinate, tacitly coordinate on something else than the standard static outcome. What you find here is that, so when the discount factor is large enough, you can coordinate, and this is reflected in the fact that you have this region here and you have this region there. So in both cases, it's for discount factor above some threshold that you can coordinate. You can get away from the static outcome of uncoordinated decision. Interestingly here, there is, as you can see, as starting from the case of perfect substitutes, where you can coordinate whenever the discount factor is above 1/2. As the essentiality parameter increases, coordination is more and more difficult. The range of discount factors for which collusion, undesirable collusion here, is sustainable shrinks as the essentiality parameter increases. And actually there is a whole range here where it's simply impossible to collude. And this is very basic for a very simple reason. Remember that collusion here is inefficient. When you raise prices above the competitive level, users opt for the incomplete version of the technology. So there is a loss of efficiency. And actually this loss of efficiency, if you have weak substitutes, is pretty large. There is a lot of value from inducing users to buy only one patent instead of both patents. And actually, in this range, the profit that can be generated by selling only one patent cannot exceed the profit that would be generated by standard competition. So there is no way you can profitably collude. This region here is the region of where you have complementers. So this is where when the firms engage in tacit coordination, they try to cooperate in avoiding double margination. So here, tacit coordination is socially desirable. It's good for the users as well as for the firms. And as you can see, the coordination becomes easier as the essentiality parameter increases, i.e. as when you become closer and closer to perfect complements. So one thing to take away from this picture is that tacit coordination is easiest at the extremes, when you have perfect substitutes or perfect complements. It's more difficult in the middle range. Now we can ask the question, suppose that you let firms set up pools subject to the independent licensing requirement, what happens? And the answer is, if you do the analysis, this is the answer. So this is the same picture as before. The only difference is that now I've allowed for a pool, and I consider the possibility of tacit coordination in a setup where firm set up a pool. The pool offers the bundle at a price which is different, possibly different from the uncoordinated pricing, uncoordinated level. And I ask the question, is it possible to sustain either more bad collusion in the case of rivalry, or more cooperation in the case of complementers? And the answer is, in the case of complementers, the pool is even subject to independent licensing, does a perfect good job. This green region here is a region where cooperation, which remember here in the case of complementer is socially desirable, it's a cooperation that tries to lower prices, that tries to avoid double marginalization. Here, the pool achieves perfect cooperation, regardless whatever the discount factor. So, it's nice to let a pool being set up here because you achieve perfect coordination, prices go down. So it's good for the firms, they avoid double marginalization, but it's also good for users. In the case of rivalry, instead, this is the region where collusion was already sustainable even in the absence of the pool. But remember, collusion, in the absence of the pool, collusion is inefficient because it leads users to buy only one product instead of both products. Now, thanks to the pool, you can collude, but in a more efficient way, in the sense that the pool is going to offer the bundle at a higher price, and only the bundle, so that the users don't have an incentive, are not induced to buy the incomplete basket, the incomplete technology. So in this region, where collusion was already feasible, it remains feasible, but now it's more efficient, and which is good for the firm, but also for users. So this is a situation in which, even in the case of rivalry, setting a pool subject to independent licensing allows for more efficient collusion, which is good for users as well as for the firms. Now, at the same time, the screen is not perfect anymore, because this is a region here where collusion was not feasible at all, whereas now, thanks to the pool, even subject to independent licensing agreement, now some collusion becomes feasible. So in that case, letting firms set up the pool leads to prices that are higher than the competitive level, whereas in the absence of the pool, firms could not achieve such collusion, and therefore the users will benefit from competition. So there is this region here, where you have minuses here, where letting a pool being set up, letting firms set up a pool is a bad idea. So because of this region, the independent licensing agreement is no longer a perfect screen when you allow, you take into account the possibility of tacit coordination. And I will conclude with describing modification, a new version of this screen, which consists in appending to the independent licensing requirement a second requirement, namely unbundling. That's the tricky thing. So suppose now that you let firms set up a pool, but you require the pool to set prices for both patents. So the pool should not set a price for the bundle, but it should set a price for each of the two patents. Then the result, the key result is as follows. If you do this, firms may be able to collude, but not more than they would in the absence of the pool. So in other words, you are on in the case of rivalry here, this dark blue region disappears. You cannot have this. If you insist on unbundling, firms are no longer able to collude in this region, i.e. there is no more collusion than there would be in the absence of the pool. So in other words, if the firms are rival, if products are de facto substitutes in equilibrium, then you will not have more bad collusion than you would have in the absence of the pool. On the other hand, if you have complementers, so if you are in this left-hand side of the diagram here, then you get a perfect cooperation, allowing firms to set up a pool, even subject to independent licensing and even subject to unbundling. Such a pool will allow firms to achieve perfect cooperation, i.e. will allow them to avoid double margination, which is good for users as well as for firms. So in other words, in the end, we are back with a perfect screen that will prevent firms from colluding more than they could even in the absence of the pool, and at the same time, the firms will be able to use such pools to engage in socially desirable cooperation. We have, in the paper, we show that this has interesting implications not only for pricing decisions in the short term, but also from the point of view of investment, because it means that if you let firms develop such pools, then firms that develop complementary products will be able to avoid double margination and therefore achieve greater profitability, so that fosters the incentive to invest in the development of complementary products, whereas, as I mentioned, those pools would be neutral in the case of rival products, so it does not, you don't have, those pools will not have the effect of encouraging the development of substitute products, of me-too kind of rival products. So in that sense, it's also a nice feature of this requirement. We extend this to asymmetry, to more than two firms. And I guess I should conclude. So what should we take from this? First thing, it's not so clear indeed whether goods are complement substitute. And if you look at all the standard models in industrial organization, in particular all the discrete choice models, users have to buy one variety or one version of a product. So they can buy brand A or brand B or brand C, but typically they buy one or the other. I think there are many instances where the problem is a bit more complex, or the situation is more interesting, it's richer if you wish. Consumers can choose between buying A or buying B, or maybe A and B. And there are zillions of situations where you have this kind of feature. And all of a sudden, whether goods are complements or substitutes is not so clear-cut anymore. In particular, you cannot rely solely on the analysis of the characteristics, the physical characteristics of the good, in order to determine whether they're substitutes and complements. It may well be the case that the price level will contribute to determining whether they're complements or substitutes in equilibrium. So that's one thing. Second, it's interesting to see what is the scope. We provide a study of the scope for tacit coordination in situations where you don't have perfect substitute, but a range of full range from perfect substitute up to perfect complements, including the gray area in the middle. Second thing to take away from this is that we provide a relatively simple screen, which is information free. The regulatory agencies don't have to invest in a detailed knowledge of the characteristics, the specifics of a given industry in order to apply the requirements, the screen that we provide. The only thing that is required is to insist that you can let firms discuss prices, you can let firms set prices together, with the caveat, with the proviso that they should retain the option of selling independently from the common platform, from the joint marketing alliance or from the patent pools. And on top of that, the patent pool or the joint marketing alliance should not only set a price for the bundle, for the package, but it should also set prices for the individual components brought by the various members of the alliance or members of the pool. If you do this, in a sense, what you do, you focus on, you identify or you highlight one socially desirable function of the pool or the commercial cooperation, which is to set price caps for the various components. And one way to convey the intuition or the main insight of what I've been doing here is that allowing firms to set price caps, individual price caps, cannot do harm to users. Now, this may have some practical implications for the debates on standard settings, on patent pools, on joint marketing alliances, commercial cooperation, more generally speaking. We provide, the message here is that as long as firms discuss price caps and retain the option of selling independently outside the platform, then such discussions or such joint price cap setting cannot do harm. And this may provide some an avenue for for allowing for more flexibility in the way particular pool members or IP players may engage in negotiations and may engage in joining forces to develop, to launch and develop new technologies. If you let firms discuss price caps initially, you may, first they may be able to reach more efficient agreements. Second, this may also allow us to save on those huge battles that we see exposed when it comes to determining the royalty rates and when there are disputes about exactly what fair, reasonable and non-discriminatory stand for. And I guess I will stop there. Thank you.